One of the biggest challenges most catfish anglers face, and the question I see the most is, what's the best catfish bait? Now I'm going to go over a few catfish baits that you can try in this video, but there's a few things I want you to keep in mind. Now on the surface, the question, what's the best catfish bait, seems kind of simple, but it gets a little more complicated because there's a lot of stuff that catfish will eat. Finding a catfish bait that works for you in the waters that you fish and for the species of catfish that you fish for, well, it's a little more complex. Furthermore, how you fish for catfish, whether it be from a boat or from the bank, also adds another little caveat to not only getting bait, but what bait is going to work best. So let's talk about some catfish baits, how to get them, and which one may be suited for the different types of anglers out there. Now, one of the most popular catfish baits out there for anglers west of the Appalachian Mountains on the drainages that dump into the Mississippi River is skipjack. I give all these geographic markers because skipjack are not everywhere in America. However, if you fish along any of the Mississippi River drainages, skipjack are one of the premier baits for you to use. The downside to them is, well, they can be hard to come by because you have to catch them on rod and reel. Now, you can catch them from the bank. The problem is, if they're not in the area that you are fishing, you might be out of luck. Now, many bank anglers will catch them when they're near shore, especially in some of the hot water discharges around the country near power plants. They vacuum seal them, freeze them, and have them for use later. Once you can get your hands on these baits, they are an excellent bait for bank anglers, boat anglers, whether you're using them fresh or frozen. Now, another bait that is very popular and probably has a wider distribution around the country is gizzard shad. Now, gizzard shad are available almost anywhere in the country that catfish live, and they're pretty much legal to use anywhere in the country. The downside to gizzard shad is if you can't buy them from a bait dealer, you have to catch them in a cast net. Gizzard shad cannot be caught on rod and reel, so you're gonna have to learn how to throw a cast net to catch them. Now, in some areas of the country, you can buy gizzard shad alive from bait dealers. This is an easy way to get your hands on some bait that you can even freeze to use later. Now, gizzard shad are probably not the best bait to freeze, but frozen bait is better than no bait. The good news is if you catch some and you plan to fish for 2 to 3 consecutive days, I have had really good luck keeping these fish in a Ziploc bag on top of the ice for 2 to 3 days of fishing. Now, a lot of people will use them live underneath a bobber, a float, a planer board, or free lined out behind the boat or from the bank, but most people will use them cut into chunks as cut bait. Now, some folks have asked about filleting a side off of them. I'm not a big fan of it. The skin on a gizzard shad is very fragile. The hook will tear out of it. I think you're better off using them in chunks if you want cut bait. And folks, it's hard to beat a head section. That is a luscious piece of bait for any catfish out there. Now, sticking with live fish baits for a moment, honestly, any fish from the waters that you are fishing, as long as they're legal to use, will be a good bait for catfish. Now, as we talk about these next couple of fish, check your local laws to see if they are legal to use. The use of game fish and different species of fish vary state to state. So before you use some of these, check your law to make sure you're legal where you're at. For you guys that are bank anglers, bluegill is your savior as far as catfish baits go that you can catch where you're fishing. Generally speaking, these fish are along the bank in relatively shallow water and within casting distance of the bank. Now, in my videos, you'll see me fishing for them. I'm obviously fishing out of a boat, but every time I'm casting to them, I'm casting up to the bank. Now, bluegill are a bait that you can use live very easily. They're very hardy and will stay alive a long time. And you can use them as cut bait. In my opinion, one of the best catfish baits out there for any species of catfish is a bluegill head. Another great thing about bluegill is they're relatively easy to keep alive in a live well or in a 5-gallon bucket with an aerator while you're bank fishing. Now, some other fish that are excellent catfish bait that you can catch on rod and reel, which is really nice for you guys that are bank anglers, are crappie, white perch, and white bass. Now, what if you're in a hurry? You just want to go fishing one afternoon with the kids and you don't have time to throw a cast net and hope that you catch bait on rod and reel. Well, my suggestion is one that I have on the boat all the time as a fishing guide. It's a go-to bait that has produced thousands of fish, and that's chicken breast. Scan across my channel, watch my videos, and you will see how often I have used this bait to catch catfish of all sizes. Now, one of the reasons I use this bait is because I have caught thousands of fish on it, some over 50 pounds. And the biggest thing is my bait store is a local grocery store. For me, where I fish and how I fish, over the past 3 years, when fished side by side with cut bait, more fish have been caught on chicken. The bottom line is this: I've got a lot of feedback from people over the years who have watched these videos and have commented on how many fish and how big a fish they are catching around the country using chicken breast. And just for the record, literally, the IGFA lists the bait that the world record blue catfish was caught on as being chicken. I know some of you are asking about manufactured baits and do they work? The bottom line is yes, they will catch catfish under certain conditions. My experience has been that these baits work better when water temperatures are above 70 degrees. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the species of fish that these baits will attract. Generally speaking, they're more effective with channel catfish. Blue catfish will hit these baits, but don't expect to catch any flathead catfish on the manufactured baits. If you're trying to catch a flathead, I think you're better off using some type of fish from the waters that you're fishing in. Now, on my guide trips, we have caught flathead catfish that are really big on chicken. And folks, I'm talking some fish that are 30 and 40 pounds. However, if I am targeting flathead catfish, I am using either live bait or some type of cut bait from the waterways that I'm fishing. As for chicken liver, chicken gizzards, and other chicken parts, I'm not a big fan. I think a lot of it goes back to chicken livers. I grew up fishing with them. They were a pain in the butt to put on the hook, keep on the hook, and you had to check your bait constantly to make sure fish had not picked it off of the hook. Now, there is no doubt whatsoever that they will catch fish, and there's all kinds of concoctions with pantyhose and string and drying it in the sun that you can do to help keep it on the hook. For me, I would rather use plain old chicken breast because it's easy, it stays on the hook better, and it's not as slimy and messy. Now, if you're using chicken liver and catching fish on it, there's no reason to change. Stick with what works for you, stick with what is in your comfort zone, and stick with what you have confidence in. Hopefully this video gives you some ideas on some other options if you're new to catching catfish, so that you can get out there, stick a hook in one, and have a good time with your family and friends.